such diverse and engaged audience for this webinar. Before we dive into the topic, I have the pleasure of introducing our esteemed speaker. Meet Patricia Marie Claire Resaba Berganio, affection, affectionately known as Pat, our UI/UX design expert at CoDev. With 9 years of experience in the field, Pat excels in creating intuitive and engaging digital experiences through user research, wireframing, UI design, high fidelity mockups, prototyping, and user testing. Pat has an impressive track record, having led over 20 user research projects and designed more than 50 interfaces. Not only that, Pat has improved usability by 40% across 15 plus projects. One of Pat's notable achievements includes the work on the SEM pages for Canva, which boosted signups by 28% and pro signups by 15%. With a diverse background in various industries, Pat brings a wealth of knowledge and a collaborative approach to design. We're thrilled to have Pat share these valuable insights and expertise in our webinar today. So she'll be discussing how design principles improves user experience in UI/UX. This topic is incredibly timely and relevant, and we are very fortunate to have such an expert guide us through it. Please join me in welcoming Patricia Marie Claire Resaba Berganio. Pat, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Oz. So, hey guys, as Oz said, I will be discussing on how design principles improves user experience in UI UX. So let me just start and share my screen so you guys can see my presentation. Can everybody see?
Yes, Pat, it's visible on our end.
Perfect. So I want this webinar to be as interactive as possible. So I would appreciate it if you guys could answer in chat or even raise hands if you have questions. I will be entertaining questions by the end. So just like put all your questions in chat and we can go to that after the webinar. So to start first, my name again is Patricia Resaba Bercanio, just to shorten it because my name is really, really long. So to start, hey there, I'm Pat. And a little about me is I'm a UI UX designer, passionate about creating user-centered designs that can achieve equity for the next billion users. So I do have 9 years of professional experience specializing and engaging in digital experiences. So most of my work experience are in here, which I work as a graphic designer for an NGO and startup agencies. I've also worked in small businesses as a multimedia designer. I worked as a UI UX designer because I transitioned from graphic designer to UI UX in my 9 years. As well as I work as a digital designer for a unicorn company, which I think you guys have an idea what. And the last one, which I'm currently working on, is I'm currently working as a UI UX designer in this awesome company, CoDev. So one of my backgrounds as well as portfolio I worked with was Stay Safe logo. So when I was still in the next level agency, I work in Stay Safe logo, which you guys I think are familiar with, especially during pandemic era. It was created as a logo for the COVID-19 exposure app that we use whenever we entered buildings in the malls or any restaurants that needed to track exposure during COVID-19 pandemic. So another work that I worked with was Fairy Skin. Fairy Skin was famous as well during pandemic because a lot of people are like taking care of their skin, especially when they're inside. So Fair Skin is a beauty product, a brand created for women who aspire to bring out the best of themselves, making themselves beautiful inside and out. So I've created a lot of graphic for Fairy Skin that is still used and posted on all of their social media. So here are some of the examples of it. And last one, my most notable work was I worked with Canva as a digital designer. So I was also a member of the Canva team, serving as a digital designer in the CRO team, which is conversion rate optimization. We usually create pages for Canva that direct and assist users who are interested in using software as well as the premium features of Canva. So most of my work are within like Canva design for everyone, as well as what would you want Canva to do for you as a user. So Canva really wants users to like be creative and be design. So that's the amount as well as the conversion rate optimization team that I work with. So next will be some facts about me. Some facts about me. I love watching K-drama and American series. I'm currently watching actually a Bridgerton season 3. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. So please let me know if you guys also watch that. And then I'm also a book nerd with a current 142 book read this year. So you guys can follow me on Good Notes if you guys have good notes. I do have some recommendations as well if you guys want for some books. And then the last fact about me is I do love modding keyboard. By the love of modding keyboard, I actually created a business with my partner and mod keyboard for others as well. So yeah, that's pretty much about me. Next would be, we're now discussing graphic design basics. So yeah, as I've said, graphic design basics is something that is really usable and timely when it comes to user experience as well in UI UX. A lot of like people right now learn first about the tool like Photoshop, Figma, Illustrator, Adobe XD, and all of that things. But a lot of like people that learned about those tools haven't really learned about the design principles that they needed to create a great experience for users as well as a great UI for users to be used in their app. So next will be, I'll be discussing that. So to start, hi, my name is Pat. I'm currently from Laguna, and I'm very happy to be running a webinar for you. So I would like to ask you guys, where are you currently watching from? And please answer on the chat below. CDO, QC, Davao. Yeah. Oh, you guys are like from Luzon to Visayas to Mindanao. Batangas City. Oh, Erica is from Laguna as well. Ilocos Norte, Cainta. So there's a lot of like people in variety. Thank you guys for answering. And let's start with what is graphic design. So what is graphic design to you? When you hear the word graphic design, what are your initial thoughts, feelings, and emotions? You guys can answer in the chat as well. Let's be interactive as much as possible. Design thinking by Sarina Cheng. Correct. Thank you. Any other like visually appealing? Thanks, Russell, for answering. Problem solving, correct? Storytelling. So yeah, there's a lot of like different answers, and all of you guys have a correct prescription, or I mean like user based bias on what graphic design is. So graphic design is where all it talks about what makes us human. We are all born with creativity, and that is what makes us human. So what else makes us human? We are social creatures and we love to communicate. We love to gossip. We love to talk about other people as much as possible that it's bad, but it's true. Humans are communicative species and we love to communicate. So what is graphic design and being creative with communication? So graphic design is how we use our creativity to communicate visually. Or to put even more simply, it's creative communication. Graphic design is not just for artists or creatives. It takes practice and some basic design know-how on how and which we're gonna learn today. So to start, we have 4 topics that talks about the basics of design principles. So we have typography, we have color, we have image, and we have layout. So to start, we're going to talk first about typography. So typography is everywhere we look. It's in the books we read, it's on the websites, and even in our everyday lives like street signs, bumpers, stickers, and product packaging. But what exactly is typography? Simply to put, typography is the style or appearance of text. It can also refer to the art of working with you or something for you, probably that you do all the time. If you create documents or other projects for work, school, or even yourself when you design websites and all. There are two basic types of fonts, serif and sans serif. Do you guys know the difference between the two? Wavebuntot. You're correct, Russell. Yeah, Wavebuntot. So, as what Russell said, serif has a classic and traditional look, as well as sans have a clean and modern, which is common in digital. So, serif font has a little feet, which is like buntot or tail. That what Russell answered. That's correct. It's actually used to guide your eyes along those little feet on long lines of text. That's why it's usually used. It's usually used in classic looks such as newspapers, books, more traditional projects that are commonly used in print publications because with the long lines of text in there, you use those little fits to guide your eyes along through the text. So that's is serif. Sans serif fonts don't have those extra little stroke or feet, hence the name, which is French for the word serif. This style is considered more clean and modern than serif fonts. And it also tends to be easier to read on computer screens, including smartphones and tablets. So my tip is always to use sans serif on 80% of typography designs, especially on UI UX designs. Another type of font is display fonts. Displays are designed for headlines. They can be bold, cute, elegant, or even downright quirky. Because they have so much personality, they're best used in small doses. Here are some of the examples of display fonts. We have script, black letters, or just plain all caps. Because of their decorative nature, display fonts are best for small amounts of text like titles and headers and more graphic heavy designs. In a way, fonts have their own language. They all have something to say beyond the words on the page. They can come across as casual, neutral, exotic, or even graphic. That's why it's important to think about your message when you're choosing a font that fits. And my top tip to always go is create a go to list of your favorite font from each category. That way, when you ask, what font do I choose? The answer will come a whole lot easier to you. Remember, when designing fonts, fonts matter. They have their own language, character, and emotion. So for example, we have this one. How does this text makes you feel with this kind of font? A text that says, I will always find you. Answer in the chat, guys. Romantic, correct. Thanks, Joseph, for answering. Lovely, sweet. The next one. Yeah, love. So, like what this said, this sends a sweet, romantic, and loving message. How about this one now? How does this make you feel? Creepy, right? Correct, sure. Well, the same text that says, I will always find you, using two different fonts, send different message. So even though you have the same content, it can feel fearsome and more about horror. So make sure you're sending the correct message with not just the message itself, but also the font that you use. Now that we tackled about basic of typography, we're now talking next about typography terminologies. So in this one, having a background in graphic design and application of typography is the key component of any designer in training. It's also an area that is awash with specific terminology. So in this section, we will break down terms. So what is font weight? Font weight usually represents the thickness of the font, which is this one. For example, we have like thin, regular, bold. That's what we call font weight. We also have sizes, and there are many ways of representing size with online typography. We have pixels, we have points, we have EM, which is the font size is relative to the parent's container font size, and we also have root EM, where the font size inherits from the root of styling. We also have percentages, which is the viewport width within the height or even the width. We also have alignment. Alignment is commonly used in like documents where you have something left aligned, right aligned, center aligned, or even justified. Next is what is the difference between typeface and font? So here we have a typeface is a collection of lettering that includes variations in size, weight, and shape. Each of those variations is called a font. So for example, in this slide, we have the typeface of Wix Madifor. But if I ask for a font of Wix Madifor, you have to like specify which one. We have Mix Madifor medium, we have Wix Madifor italic, we have Wix Madifor regular, and that's what we call font. But if you want a font family, that's what we call typeface. So within the typography, we also have this terminologies that lets the user differ or even like help them know about the font itself, because different fonts have different qualities. They have different kerning, which is the distance between individual letters or characters. They also have tracking, which is like the overall distance of the letters within the word. And we also have leading, which is the line height of the words. So these days, you can use any fonts on any website, but please, you have to be mindful of the type of font license that you're going to use. Not all fonts are free to use. Another tip is don't use too many fonts. Too many fonts can be distracting, so try to stick with 2 to 3 fonts, one bolder, one within the body, and another one for metadata. Another one as well, another tip that I have is to create type scales or support multiple devices. Typography language, aesthetics, and implementation are vast array of subjects. Don't use too much uppercase because it can be hard to read and it also feels like you're shouting at your users. Avoid also coloring text in bright colors because if you're colorblind, these colors can be interpreted as same thing. You should also use typefaces that complements and contrast with one another, and as always, test with real users. So if you're having trouble with like font combinations, here are some good cheat sheet that I have. So please take a screenshot if you guys doesn't have anything for this one. So yeah, when deciding fonts to use, always think less is more. It's best to limit yourself with 1 to 2 per project. You've probably heard that opposites attract. That is the same with fonts. We have all caps and lowercase. We have complementary colors. We also have regular paired with italics. So that is probably with fonts. Next topic would be hierarchy. When talking about text, it's also important to talk about hierarchy. With hierarchy, you can lead your audience focus on where you want it to be. For example, in this graphic, you will read this first, and then you will read this, and then this bit, and lastly, you will read this last. Remember that people will almost read the biggest and boldest words in your graphic, and that's how you highlight the most important message to get them hooked and reading more about your design. Readers also reads headlines and subheads and also decides if they want to continue. That's why putting your most important message on the biggest font would help in hierarchy. In hierarchy, you can create different hierarchy in many ways. You can use weight to stands out the most important one. You can use color as well. You can use size, or you can even use the combination of the three. Hierarchy is used to guide the reader's eye to whatever is most important. In other words, it shows them where to begin and where to go next, using different levels of emphasis. The average user tends to scan the entire content of a screen. Therefore, the highlights should give a clear idea of what the website or application is about. So another example of this hierarchy is some real life examples that we're currently seeing or using in websites. So size, the larger the element, the more it will attract attention. In this screenshot of the New Yorker, the size hierarchy revealed in several of the blocks that makes up the layout. The title, The Fate of the News in the Age of COVID-19, is the point that the user will perceive as the main, followed by the blocks on the left, which is next biggest, and then the text and articles on the right. Colors as well is used for hierarchy. Like I said before, these are some real life examples. Bright colors stand out more than muted colors. Color is a powerful visual resource. Its proper use can effectively separate elements in a screen to prioritize or deprioritize them. Color can be used to establish a hierarchy of information on a web page or app, and it guides user attention to key elements and action. For example, in this one, where sign in and no account, on the first example is kind of contrasting each other. You don't know which one is the primary CTA. While the next one, sign in and no account register, can be a more muted, as well as it's more easier to read for users to prioritize which one you want to know about. Proximity is also an important part of hierarchy. Elements close to each other attract more attention than distant elements. Proximity is therefore grouping of objects in a design to create connections and associations. So when things are closer together, it usually means they are related. In this example of Netflix homepage, the first group contains the title and synopsis of the film. And then the second group contains the list of 6 films at the bottom. The distance between those can make it easier for the users to view and to pass from one group to another without actually encountering visual noise. Alignment is also an example, like what I said in left aligned, right aligned, or even centered aligned with typography. It's also important in hierarchy. The human brain loves pattern. That's why many websites are symmetrical or they use a consistent alignment. This gives us the opportunity to break this rule to strategically call the user's attention to a specific point. A user will be able to associate these elements according to their alignment or even misalignment. So for example, all of the information in here are left aligned, while this button is currently on the right. So that's why it actually gives emphasis because it breaks the rules of having the alignment on all the left. Next one is repetition. Repeated styles give the impression that elements are related. This type of hierarchy consists of reusing the same similar elements in interface. Repetition also gives some preponderance based on visual patterns. If something is repeated, it is because it's important. In the white menu of Uber website, an icon and a label are placed 8 times for their category. This balance with a smaller size places the menu second in the hierarchy. After getting to the main title that says Get in the Driver's Seat, it is important to know that repetitions are very good for creating second and third level relevancies. Establishing hierarchy is simple. Just decide which element you want the reader to notice first, then make them stand out. So on this one, you can see that Marian Pro Bold are used in the name itself. And then we have the subtitle called Web Designer, which is highlighted as well in green. They use color in this hierarchy. And then the last one would be the Marian Pro Regular, which they use in the information. High-level items are usually larger, bolder, or even different in some way. Just remember that to keep it simple and just stick to a few complementary styles and always use white space for your hierarchy. Next one we will be having is colors. So for this one, let's play a little game. Name the brand based on the color shown. Just answer on the chat so I can know, guys. What do you think this brand is? Google, correct. Next one would be this one. MasterCard, DHL. The answer for this one is actually McDonald's. Next one is this. Instagram, yeah. A lot of people know about this one. So as you can see, colors play a vital role in design, especially in everyday life. It draws your eyes to an image as well as it gives you an understanding and knowing more about the idea of a brand, or you can actually coincide it with a brand. It can even communicate something important without even using words at all. So how do we know which color looks good together and which one don't? The answer is simple. Color theory. Artists and designers have followed color theory for centuries, but anyone can learn more about it. It can help you feel confident in many different situations, whether it's choosing colors for a design or putting together the perfect outfit. Let's start with the beginning, with a refresher on the basics. Remember, learning about primary and secondary colors in school, then you already have some knowledge of color theory. Secondary colors are created by combining two primary colors. Red and yellow makes orange, yellow and blue makes green, and then blue and red makes purple. If we mix these colors together, we even get more in between shades like red orange, yellow green, blue makes green, and a lot of things. So on this one, now that you know about color wheel, we will take it another step further with hue, saturation, and value. Hue is the easiest one. It's basically just another word for color. In this example below, you might describe hue as a coral pink or red, depending on your interpretation. Saturation refers to intensity of the same color or hue. In other words, whether the color appears more subtle or more vibrant. Highly saturated colors are brighter and richer, while desaturated colors have less pigment, therefore less oomph. Value has also to do with how dark or light the color is, ranging from black to white. As you can see below, this gives us many different shades from a deep reddish brown to a light pastel pink. So how do we put this all together to create a professional looking color scheme? There are actually tried and true formulas based on something called color harmony that can help. The easiest formula for harmony is monochromatic because it only uses one color on or one hue. Oh, sorry, you were doing something? Yeah. So to create a monochromatic color scheme, pick a spot on the color wheel, then use your knowledge of saturation and value to create those variations. The best thing about monochromatic schemes is they are guaranteed a match because they only use this certain colors which is only differs in value or even in saturation. Analogous is also important, and these color schemes are next to each other on the wheel. So as you can see here, blue, cyan blue, yellow green, and up to green yellow. Analogous color schemes are something that can easily be played with because it's a lot easier for like users to coincide with them since they are closest with the color wheel. Don't be afraid to play with the palette and create your own unique interpretation. Complementary colors are opposite of each other on the wheel. So for instance, on this one, we have the red and green, which is opposite on the color wheel. It's usually coincides with Christmas, red being the cherry and green being the leaves. And then the last one would be triadic color scheme. This uses three colors that are evenly spaced, forming a perfect triangle on the wheel. These combinations tend to be pretty striking, especially when they use primary or secondary colors. So please be mindful when using them in your work. Some famous example of this one is the Joker. As you can see, Joker uses three evenly spaced color, which is purple, yellow, and green. There are a few classic do's and don'ts when it comes to color. So for this instance, have you ever seen a color that seems to vibrate whenever they're placed to each other? Something like this. It's painful, right? The solution is to tone it down, literally. And there are a simple way to do it. Start with one color and try adjusting its lightness and darkness. as well as its saturation. Sometimes a little contrast is all your color palette needs. Readability is an important factor in any design. Your colors should be legible and easy on the eyes, especially when working with text. The solution is to tone it down. So as you can see here, we have a UI that uses a lot of colors. They have like rainbow color on the header itself. They have yellow. They have red background. They also have a dark red on most of the UI text, which is this one. They have a green CTA. So there's a lot of like colors in here. Neutral colors like black, white, and gray can actually help you balance in your design. So when you use colors, it really stands out for an icon similar like this. Contrast. Contrast in UI design is the difference between two or more colors. It plays a critical role. One of the principles of contrast is text readability. This is really important. To ensure text is legible, it should have a sufficient contrast with its background. Another tip on this is actually use a tester that is described by WCAG, which is this one. So WCAG talks about web accessibility initiative. It it talks about the contrast between the background as well as the text itself. Because for instance, when you're using a white text on a dark background or vice versa, it's a lot more easier to read because it provides a high level of contrast versus on low contrast where the text is not actually a lot seen in here. Next one would be, so just like fonts, colors also send out different message as well. So make sure you're sending the right message, the right emotions in every social media or even UI post that you create. White for cleanliness and light, green for health and prosperity, blue for dependable professional security, and all of this. So take a screenshot if you think this is a helpful cheat sheet, which I probably almost always use this. Yeah, something like Inside and Out. I know Inside and Out is currently being shown right now. So as you can see, green is kind of used for like disgust because it coincides with the color of your vomit. Blue is when you're feeling blue, when you're sad. Sometimes for emotions, and red is for like angry, yellow is for joy. So yeah, color is really a great term, especially when you're conveying emotions, and these are actually studied more in depth. That is called color psychology. So yeah, that is the color with the design principles. Color in UI design is a potent tool, capable of conveying emotions, guiding user behavior, and establishing brand identity. So always consider accessibility, ensure proper contrast, and provide alternative text for color-coded information following the guidelines WCAG. Test for readability, maintain consistency, embrace user feedback, as well as keep trends in perspective. So these are the best practices for color use in UI design. Well-crafted text can win difference between something ordinary and something extraordinary. All it takes is colors, as well as in everywhere you look, there is always color. It can be intimidating to use in your work, but it doesn't have to be. Just keep experimenting and remember what you have learned with color theory. Soon, you'll also look great in all the clothes that you're choosing because all these great looking colors will feel like a second nature to you. Yeah, like Uncle Roger. This is actually a palette of Uncle Roger. Thanks. So next one would be imagery. In user interfaces, four types of images are commonly utilized. We have photographs, we have illustrations, we have iconography, and we have data visualizations. So for photographs, these are ideal in showcasing products, environments, and people. Illustrations are used for visual to represent workflows, processes, people, and even concepts in a more artistic way. Illustrations can also help to be accompanied by text or incorporated into an infographic. Iconography relies on simplified and recognizable symbols, and these icons are used to represent menu items, actions, or objects within the system. Last would be data visualizations, which are these ones. Data visualizations are representation of complex data or information. They transform raw data into meaningful visual and charts that are used to communicate data-driven insights in an easily understandable way. Images can be a powerful force. No matter what the subject is, we're naturally drawn to them. However, images aren't just for decorations. In design, they are the hook that draws the viewer in. Compelling visuals can help you connect with the audience and make a strong impression before they even read a single word. Of course, it's not just about content, but there's also a technical side to images, which can have a big impact in your design. It doesn't matter if the photo you chosen is absolutely perfect in every other way. If it's blurry, pixelated, it could give a wrong impression. Few stock images are perfect as is, even if they're technically high quality ones. But maybe the image is in the wrong size or colors. Color could use some work. Fortunately, for basic programs that make you simple adjustment, look for this option the next time you need to fix or enhance an image. Choose an image with similar characteristics. When your design requires multiple images, match their characteristics as much as possible. So for example, in this one, in the Lyft website, the images displayed on Lyft's rider experience page have shared similar characteristics like in bright colors, high contrast, and people as the main subjects. While on Todoist, each template is accompanied by an illustration, so they always keep things consistent. They share all similar attributes, circular illustrations and icons, as well as users' earth tones as primary color palette. And it's drawn because it's the same sketchy style. Always match icon stroke with text weight. When choosing an icon set, all icons should have a similar attributes such as a stroke weight, height, width, and even type of corners, or fill whenever they are filled or outlined. You can go one step further by matching your icon and your set stroke into the weight of your approximate weight of your typeface. So if the stroke of these icons are in bold, you should use bold typeface. If your icons have thicker stroke, it's great to use thicker typeface as well. And if your brand guidelines dictate a typeface that is on the thinner side, look for a thin and minimalistic icon set. This way, all design elements can look uniform and consistent, and no one aspect of the design will pull unnecessary focus. Avoid unnecessary graphic elements and infographics and this data visualization. Infographics and data visualization are born from need to share a lot of data or convey insights in a simplified and engaging way. It may be tempting to use many colors and graphical elements in these visuals to make them stand out, but unnecessary graphic elements can overpower and diminish the value of these images. So this chart showcases data with the fewer superfluous elements, while this one conveys the same data as the chart above, but it adds several unnecessary like textures, grid lines, outline bars, and even a textured background. All these elements take away from the impact of the data itself. Equal sizes. Appropriate position and size for your image are the better. Scalability. It shouldn't be a distorted image. It should create a negative visual noise and it should be perfect for any resolutions that you use, whether it's on desktop, a more smaller desktop, tablet, or even a phone. Adding photos and graphics and other visual to your work is a great way to make it even more engaging. Even a simple background can transform your design into something special. Just remember, what you've learned about image quality, both technical and conceptual, and your work is sure to stand out for the right reasons. It should be sharp, clear, distinct, and memorable. Next one would be layout. And this, I think, would be the last one. So last would be layout. So we have some tips for you here. Tip number one is to practice proximity. Proximity sounds fancy, but it's actually pretty simple to achieve. Take the elements that are related together and group them together. So for your poster, give the title its own space, then group the details like time and location together. Tip number two is to embrace the negative space. The empty space around your elements helps the viewer focus on them without getting any distraction. This gives balance to your design. One alignment tip is if you're working with just few elements or words, you can use center alignment. Or in the other hand, if you're working with a bit more text and elements, you can use the left alignment. In many ways, layout and composition are the building blocks of your design. They give your work structure and make it easier to navigate from one margin to the size to the content in between. Why is composition so important? In short, it's the way your content is arranged. It doesn't matter if you're working with text, images, elements, or even in graphic. Without a thoughtful and well composed composition, your work can basically fall apart. Good composition requires a solid foundation. It allows you to engage user and help them find the information they need to get the message across. Poorly designed websites can appear cluttered, disorganized, and confusing. Here's a simple guide when creating a good composition. Pick a format, use a grid, group elements, and define the interactions in between. The purpose of composition and web design is the influence of user journey. Think about how the users will interact with your design. Which elements you want them to notice instantly and which are less important. Scale and visual hierarchy are your best friends when arranging elements to signal a focal point. Position elements in a way that is naturally led users to the most important parts, such as this button in this example. Proximity is all about using visual space to show relationship in your content. In practice, it's pretty simple. All you have to do is make sure related items are grouped together. For instance, blocks of text or elements in a graphic, as example below. Groups are not related to each other, should be separated, and visually emphasize their lack of relationship. All in all, this makes your work easier to understand at a glance, whether it's purely text or something more visual. White space is an important part of every composition. Now, this doesn't mean literal white space, it just means negative space, like the spaces between your content, your lines, or even outer margins. There is no way to use white space correctly, but it's good to understand its purpose. White space helps you define and separate sections, it gives your content room to breathe, and even gives your work and even if your work starts to feel cluttered or uncomfortable, a little white space might be just what the doctor ordered. Alignment is something you have to deal with all the time. Even if you don't realize it, whenever you type an email or create a document, the text is automatically aligned. When aligning objects by yourself, it might help to imagine your content arranged inside of a grid, just like the example below. Contrast simply means that one item is different from another. In layout and composition, contrast can help you do many things like catch the reader's eye, give emphasis in signage, and even call attention to something important. To create contrast in this example below, they use a color that is more than one style of the text objects differing in sizes, making this more design dynamic. Repetition is a reminder that every project should have a consistent look and feel. This means ways to reinforce your design by repeating or echoing certain elements. For instance, if you have a specific color palette, always look to carry it through your presentation or web design. If you choose in a special header style, use it every time. It's not just for aesthetic reasons, but it's also for uniformity. This can help your work be more consistent and easier to read. When viewers know what to expect, they can relax and just focus on content. You might say layout and composition are the unsung heroes of design. It's easy to overlook their role, but they're also part of everything you do. The principles of you just learned can help you actually in your UI UX project. All it takes is a little attention to detail, and you can create beautiful and professional looking compositions. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So the basics of design principles are text, color, imagery, and layout. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope this helped you learn more about design principles and it can help you more with your UI UX project. I will now entertain any questions, so I'll be giving back the mic to Oz or Francis.
Okay, thank you so much, Pat, no, for that enlightening and insightful presentation. Your expertise and the valuable knowledge you've shared with us today are greatly appreciated. Now, we hope everyone found the discussion on how design principles improve user experience in UI UX as informative and engaging as we did. Pat's experience and practical examples have certainly given us a lot to think about and implement in our own projects. And before we conclude, again, we would like to take a few moments to address some of the questions from you guys. So if you haven't um, typed in already your questions, please do so in the chat box and we will try to get through as many as we can. All right, so let me check. Okay, we have one from John's. He's asking, what can you suggest for those who are creating troubleshooting guides so users don't skip steps despite having a lot, despite having a long set of instructions? At least tips when it comes to UI UX. So, Pat?
Yep. So for this question, I'll just repeat. What can you suggest to those who are creating troubleshooting guides so users don't skip steps despite having a long set of instruction? One can think that you always have to use data visualizations as what we talked about imagery. It can actually help your users guide through step by step. A lot of like things right now are using infographic as a style whenever you're like checking out for hiring processes in companies. Instead of like explaining long bars of text, they can use infographic which explains more on how the steps look like. You can use icons, you can use imagery, or you can use even vectors. So yeah, that's how you can help, and that's how it can help the design principles in your UI UX. Just use data visualizations and try to keep the instructions as minimal and as digestible as possible.
All right. Well, I hope that answered your question, Johns. Next, we go to Don. He asked, my question tackles text alignment, layout, and accessibility. So my question is, are all UI elements consistently aligned in the same manner when pseudo lock is applied? Am I saying that right? Pseudo lock? Do elements like icons, text, and buttons maintain their relative positioning?
This actually really depends on how the design or style sheet is implemented. While others, whenever they are using like for example, on Facebook, you can see all the text that are left aligned, but all the UI are actually justified. So they all have to maintain relative positioning when it comes to UI, but all of the dynamic text are left aligned. That's why it's much easier to read and to also differentiate between the dynamic as well as the consistent UI text. So yeah, when it comes to like text alignment, layout, and accessibility, you can also use groupings. Always use like groupings whenever you want to differentiate between the two. And if you want to maintain relative positioning, it's always great to always align or group things that are together versus the other ones. So yeah.
All right. Hope that answered your question, Don. Next, I think you can go a couple more questions. From Hyacinth, what tool do you use for wireframes and mockups?
For wireframes and mockups, before when I was actually started designing, I actually used Photoshop when creating mockups. But now that Figma and Adobe XD were developed, I use Figma for my main workspace and work tool when creating high fidelity mockups. It can also create prototypes as well as low fidelity mockups. So it's a great way to it's a great tool to practice whenever you want to try creating wireframes.
All right. Angelica asked, are you sharing this recording? Yes, we will be sharing this recording. Just keep in mind your emails. We will be sending you one. But it may not be this week, but hopefully next week. So yeah, just stay tuned. Okay, so we have one from Mark. Do UI UX designers believe that AI can replicate the creativity and intuition that human designers bring to the table? Why or why not?
A lot of like people are actually asking me this question because AI is such um is such a big thing, especially to technology. It actually helps users replicate human emotions and overall. But I think on UI UX, AI isn't actually replacing people because you cannot replicate artificial intelligence cannot actually replicate user emotions because as a users we develop adaptability each and every day. For example, back in 2000s we use cell phones that doesn't have screens and we only use like phones that are blocks. And now that people evolve and technology evolve, people also evolve. So in order for like AI to replicate us, it would be too hard. They can actually replicate like common things, and I think it can help with like everyday things. For example, checking bugs in your codes, creating user personas. That way it can help you with your user journey. And yeah, I think for me, it doesn't replicate empathy, which is the most important when you're doing UI UX because it actually defines the user experience whenever you're creating the designs.
All right. So next we have Lucian. May I ask, when making a navigation bar for a website, what should be considered for deciding what the height of the frame would be and how to align the navigational items?
May I ask, when making a navigation bar for a website, what should be deciding the height of the frame would be and how aligning the nav items? So for this one, it actually depends on your navigation bar. If you're creating a navigation bar on top, it should always be at least 8% of the height of the whole UI or like the mock-up of it. And that way you can also align items. So for example, if you're using most of the items centered, your navigation bar should also be centered. If you're using it left aligned, it would be great to have your items on your navigation bar to be left aligned. That way it can be consistent and uniform all throughout your UI.
Good. Hope that answered your question, Lucian. Next we have Nico. I think we can cater 3 more questions after this. What is the best way to use the design principles in solving design challenges and accessibility and usability issues?
What's the best way to use design principles? I think on this one, a lot of people tackle about different tools, but I think in solving design challenges, design principles can always help you along the way. For example, you're having a assignment that tackles about redesigning a certain website that has a lot of things. By learning about design principles like white spaces, color theory, or even typography, it can help you clean up those mock-ups, those websites, and it can help you design a more effective website. That way, the UI and the UX will be a lot more functionable whenever you're like doing everything as well as creating the UI for it.
Right. Okay, so we have one weird question. Are you single, Pat? That Christian was asking.
Sorry, Christian, but I just got married.
Oh, there
I'm
you
not
go.
single.
There goes your straightforward answer. Sorry, my guy. We have oh well, there's a lot of questions. What are some common UX pitfalls that designers should avoid?
I think one of the pitfalls when you're like designing is bias. Bias is a really hard challenge whenever you're designing because when you get too comfortable in a style of like design trends, for example, in a house, a lot of people right now are doing house renovations and they always go through with like the classic puting kahoy or like the combinations of white and wood, but getting too comfortable with it can actually make the house bland. That's the same way with UI. I think a lot of people need to research more, get updated with trends. That way, you can get out of your comfort zone and notice a lot more things and notice a lot more trends that can help you be a better designer yourself.
All right. So I think we can cater one last question. Can you talk about how you find inspiration for your designs and when is it okay to borrow to borrow elements from existing designs.
So, talking about inspiration and copying, I think a lot of people start copying as a practice. I even though also copy still some of the works that I think are great. But one thing that doesn't like get me through the imposter syndrome because I tend to always like look for trends, inspirations like in Dribble, Behance. A lot of people are creating great works. One thing that actually can differentiate you with that is to always work with user experience first. Always work with low fidelity items. Work first with your flowcharts. That way, whenever you look for inspiration on design, it can be original as well as you can just like take inspiration and apply it into your original user experience work. So yeah, that is okay. I think it's okay to borrow elements and existing designs still because that's how you usually do paintings. You do paintings of like things that you see outside. You do paintings of portraits of people, and each style or each artist can have different art style. That's the same way with designing. You also have different design styles.
All right. Um, well, I guess that's all the time we have. Thank you again so much, Pat. No? So, and yeah, and thank you to everyone who submitted questions, and a special thanks to our professional speaker, Pat, for providing such thorough and insightful answers. As we wrap up, I want to extend our heartfelt thanks to all of you for joining us today. Your participation has enriched this session, making it a truly interactive and beneficial experience for everyone involved. Please do like and follow our social media pages and stay tuned for our upcoming webinars and other updates, including our job openings. I'll be putting it in the chat box right now. Hold on. I will post the links. So, oh, sorry. Group chat. There we go. So, you can see there our links. No, we have Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and of course our very own website, codev.com/careers. Now, okay, so one asked, my hiring? Yes, we actually have a lot of open positions. Now, just feel free to look into our website na lang, no? And again, I highly encourage everyone to like and follow our socials for you guys to be updated on our upcoming webinars because this is going to be a monthly thing. Now, again, thank you so much, guys, and have a great rest of your evening. Goodbye and take care.
Take care, everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar. Bye.
Bye bye.